since I've seen her live, but when I was thinking of a keynote to invigorate change and channel our inner beginner fearlessness and some comedy, I immediately reached out to Liz on Instagram, and she graciously said yes. Liz Bohannon is a social entrepreneur who creates impact through multiple channels, including starting and running companies, building communities locally and globally. She writes, she's a podcaster, she's a coach. She's the founder of Sseko Designs and a partner, and currently the chief growth officer at Noonday Collection, a company that creates community and opportunity for people across the globe. She is a very sought out keynote speaker, and she loves to use her own lived experiences to inspire healthy leadership and to equip leaders just like you to build community within their high impact organizations. So with that, today, Liz will share her story with you to highlight a few of the key principles of The Beginner's Pluck. This book is so good. Please go order it on Amazon. We can find the link and put it up here, but it's so good, so good. I have so many notes throughout the whole book, and it teaches leaders and change makers like yourself to channel your inner beginner to help unlock progress, innovation, and connection. So with that, I will turn it over to Liz.
Well, hello, everybody. I am so delighted to be here with you today. And listen, a lot of you probably don't know who I am, and that's fair because I don't know who most of you are, but I am just going to enter into this space today. I'm making a couple assumptions about who you are based on the fact that you are here. And the first thing that I want to say, I think I know about you, is that you are a little bit bananas. You are a little bit bananas. You are in a very, very small percentage, and I actually think maybe a shrinking percentage of humanity who has seen a challenge, who has seen a problem in the world, and who, instead of getting overwhelmed, instead of falling into a paralysis, instead of maybe the worst, like just becoming really like jaded or cynical or checked out, you, for whatever reason, whether this is the way that you were created or something in your upbringing, in your story, you are bananas enough to think that you might be able to do something about it. And that instead of only getting overwhelmed, listen, we all do get overwhelmed. We all do check out sometimes, and that's entirely appropriate. But on a whole, instead of choosing those things, you have said, hey, this is a problem that I think maybe I could help right in the world. And not in a way that is just like, so I'm going to post once on social media about it and make sure that everybody knows my opinion, and then kind of go back into the safety of my own little world, but in a way that really does require just a long faithfulness in the direction of hope and justice and building a brighter tomorrow. And I am just so wildly grateful that you exist and that you're a little bit nutso in that way. I also am going to make the assumption that you are somebody who is more driven by problems than by position. I think there's two types of people in the world when it comes to our vocations, at least. People who are really driven by position, like they know what they want to do in the world. They kind of know who they want to be. They kind of know their career path, and they know what like kind of spot on the ladder that they want to occupy. And they've really oriented their life around getting the right position. And then you have people that are oriented around solving the right problem. I think occasionally those two things can go together, but generally I kind of think that there's these two types of people in the world. And my guess is that you, and I don't say this pejoratively, or if I do, I mean it towards myself as well, because I am one of these people. We are problem children. We are problem children. I don't know if anybody else grew up hearing that about yourself, but I mean it to be a great celebratory thing. We are problem children, meaning we are more fixated and more interested in solving important problems in the world than we are about the position that we happen to occupy. Here's kind of what I know about the difference between people who are very position oriented versus problem oriented. When you're position oriented and when you're like, hey, my name's so-and-so, and I know that my goal in life is to be this level of performer at this type of big corporation, you can kind of make your way through life with a goal of making as little mistakes as possible. Like that actually kind of might work for you. It's just like, don't mess up too big. Don't draw too much attention to yourself, and you can kind of keep advancing. If you are a problem child, that way of thinking and that way of being in the world just doesn't work for you. It's not going to work for you. And you will drive yourself nuts if you try to operate like that. If you're just like, okay, my goal is just like, don't make mistakes, play it safe, do things that won't rock the boat where I'm not going to look like an idiot. Side note, I would argue that like the vast majority of humanity, at least Americans, are operating out of like their sole goal in life. No one would say this out loud. This is all very subconscious. Is like, just don't embarrass yourself. Like, just don't humiliate yourself. And you can do that, especially if you're a position person. You can kind of do that and it can kind of work for you. If you are trying to solve an interesting problem in the world, if there is a wrong that you are attempting to make right, you, by nature of what you are trying to tackle and the way that you're going to go about being successful, your path to success is going to be marked by so many more mistakes, failures, and rejections. It's just the nature of the beast and of the path that you've chosen. And so we can't compare ourselves to the position people who are just trying not to make mistakes. We are operating according to a different set of rules. And so I want to just like release us. And I want to argue that we should not only be like accepting this reality, but maybe even celebrating our failures and our mistakes along the way, but only failures of a specific kind. When people are like, celebrate failure, I'm kind of like, okay, yes, I do think maybe there's an asterisk there. And I want to talk about the asterisk because just like there are two types of people, there are two types of mistakes that you as a problem child can be making. The first set of mistakes is the mistake of inaction. It's the mistake that most of us honestly are making most days, but it's so sneaky because it's like really quiet and it's subtle and there isn't like an acute pain that's attached to this type of mistake. It's the mistake of not doing anything. It's the mistake of seeing 15 viable options ahead of you and ending the day having not taken action towards any of them because you're just like not sure which one's the actual best. It's the mistake of feeling a little overwhelmed. It's the mistake of like having an idea, but then being really freaked out if it doesn't work. Like, are people not going to trust you? Are they going to criticize you? Is it going to upset your donor base? Whatever the story is that you're telling yourself. So day after day, you're just literally not doing the thing. And as Annie Dillard would say, something to this effect, I really don't want to butcher Annie Dillard, our days make up our weeks, which make up our months, which ultimately make up our lives. That's one set of mistakes. And I'm not really interested in celebrating that type of mistake. It's a much more common mistake. I feel like 90% of mistakes that people are making in the world are mistakes of that variety. There is another type of failure. And that failure is precipitated by something I like to call pluck. Pluck, of course, meaning spirited and determined courage, which is why I call this specific type of mistake our pluck ups. Our pluck ups. And our pluck ups are the mistakes and the failures that we make, we make when we have this sense of spirited and determined courage. When we go, I actually don't know if this is the right path or the best path, but I'm just going to do it anyway. I know that there's a chance that it's not going to work because it's never been done before, but I'm just going to do it anyway. And then guess what? You put all of this energy, you put all of this excitement, you think about it, you dream about it, you rally your team around it, and then it doesn't work. And I will tell you, that is an acutely painful situation to be in because your ego is bruised and you're a little bit humiliated and you're telling yourself all of these stories and it's rocking your confidence. So the cost of this in the short term, it is more painful. I will not lie to you, but I am promising you that over the course of a lifetime, a life full of pluck ups is infinitely more effective, more successful, and really just more life-giving than a life full of not doing the thing. And so I want to build communities of people who can recognize the difference between the two types of mistakes and who embrace our pluck ups and who even celebrate them. Because if we want to be a person who's okay with plucking up every now and then, and if we want to build teams and organizations that also embody that spirit, we as the leaders have to go first. we have to go first and we have to model it, which oftentimes means like being a little bit obvious and obnoxious about how we feel about these things. And by that, I'm not exaggerating. I could tell you about plenty of pluck ups that I've made. In fact, I once had a pluck up. Oh my gosh, such a disaster. Such a disaster, you guys. It was a whole like product launch. It went very poorly due to a disastrous supply chain issue that, by the way, had me getting locked in an Ethiopian shoe factory. And when I finally made my way out of the factory and back home and we launched the product and it was a huge failure, I ended up burying a pair of those specific shoes in my backyard. And I performed my first pluck up funeral because I do. That is how much I believe that our pluck ups deserve to be accepted, acknowledged, celebrated, maybe even eulogized a little bit, and then, of course, laid properly to rest. You may think that I'm kidding, but if you're curious, this is what a pluck up funeral looks like. I am now so obsessed with this concept of pluck ups. I have an entire podcast called Plucking Up. It is dedicated to interviewing some really interesting and successful people like Matthew McConaughey and Ariana Huffington and Liz Gilbert, not about their highlights and their wins and the things that they tried that worked, but about their mistakes and their failures along the way, as long as those mistakes and failures were precipitated with some pluck. So how do we do that? How do we become people? We have a lot of messaging culturally that tells us just don't make mistakes. Don't embarrass yourself. Don't humiliate yourself. Try the thing that you know will work because it's better to quietly fail and just kind of like slowly die than it is to like go big and make a mistake and have people watch it. So we have so much messaging and in so much that's ingrained in us. We actually have to do a lot of work to kind of unwire that. I wrote a book called Beginner's Pluck. And my thesis is basically if we can learn how to intentionally channel our inner beginner, we will be people who will be more willing to make pluck ups because that beginners do that more naturally. And there's actually 14 mentalities and principles, things beginners do more naturally that as you grow in your career, as your organization grows in scope or in size or in impact, the further on we get, like being seen as like a leader or an expert, the less likely we are to do these specific things. And what I'm arguing is we got to hang on actually to those specific things. You know, we have this whole phrase, it's called beginner's luck. It's kind of like pejorative. It's like, oh, well, they were just successful. They're a beginner. How are they successful? That must have been luck, right? Well, I would argue, actually, there are certain ways that beginners show up in the world. Oftentimes, beginners are successful, not despite their lack of experience, but perhaps precisely because of it, right? And so there's 14 principles and mentalities and mindsets. We're only going to talk about a couple today. And I want to tell you a little bit about my story, really just to illustrate some of these principles. So I started out like probably so many of you, which is why I just love this community, as an idealistic, passionate college student. And I was particularly idealistic and passionate while I was in college about issues. My problem that kept me awake at night as a problem child was women and girls living in global extreme poverty and the economic and educational disparity gap that accompanies that. And so I knew a lot about this issue. I studied it. I wrote about it. I read about it. I had a lot of opinions about it. And I'm a millennial. How many other millennials we got here in the house? And so I was very ingrained with the like kind of self-helpy, supposedly very inspirational messaging about like dreaming big and making a big impact in the world and like being a world changer and all of these like very, very big I don't know, like phrases that were meant to like inspire us to go do big things in the world. And I like, woo, ate it up, loved it. And so I graduated from college and was just like, okay, if I want to like make my life matter, it has to be really big. Unfortunately, I didn't like have a big idea. I was like, okay, you're telling you to like dream big. How does one like get the big dream? Is there like a number to call? Is there like a menu of options? I certainly don't have an idea or like a big dream. So maybe I'll just go get like a big, cool dream job. Went down that path, really gave it my all. Very few people called me back. I ended up taking the actual only job that I got right outside of college, which was at a corporate communications firm in my hometown. And I felt like kind of like a failure, I think, because it wasn't like big. It wasn't a big dream. It wasn't a big job. It wasn't like a fancy big plan. I'm a couple months in and I have this moment. I'm actually doing some research for a client. And I have this moment where I'm like, it's kind of interesting, Liz, that you say you have a thing that you're passionate about, which is women and girls living in global extreme poverty. And like, just like quick inventory snap of your life right now, you wouldn't really know it. There's nothing about your life, your job, but specifically like your friends, your communities, your relationship, like none of that on a relational level is actually impacted or involves like a single woman or girl who grew up in global extreme poverty. And so I had this moment where I realized that there was this delta. There was this gap between what I said I cared about and the actual life that I was building. And for me, specifically, my relationships in my community. And it was pretty convicting. Like I kind of had this moment where I was like, is that passion just going to be kind of like this season of life that I had as a college kid? And now I'm just going to like be a normal adult and kind of pursue the normal safe path. Or is this actually a moment in time where I have the agency and the opportunity to close that gap? And I immediately was like, I want to close the gap. And then my next thought was like, okay, practically speaking, how do we close the gap? And then my next thought was, well, if you had one single friend, like one girl who was your actual friend, someone you were in relationship and community with, who was actually impacted by these issues, you would technically close that gap. And what started happening in that moment, I didn't realize it at all, but in hindsight, I can see very clearly what started happening in that moment is very counterintuitively to all of the like millennial self-help inspirational posters in my guidance counselor's office. I actually started giving myself permission to dream small, to dream really, really small. My new microscopically small dream became not about some like big genius silver bullet. No one at the Gates Foundation has ever thought about this before. Way to bring like 10 million girls out of global extreme poverty. My new microscopically small dream became little Liz Forkin at the time. Go make one friend. One friend. That was the new like core. That was the one KPI and metric for success. And here's what happened. Once I actually gave myself permission to dream small and to like kind of get excited about that small dream, I started to realize here's the interesting thing that people don't tell you about your small dreams. Big dreams get all the hype, they get all the love. Small dreams typically do not require like huge multi-million-dollar budgets. They don't require approval from like a board of directors. They don't require a 300,000 person email list or for some social campaign to go viral. They don't actually require very much of anything, which means there's very little excuses. There's very little barrier to actually being able to act on our small dreams. And for me, what that did was it actually created this wild sense of momentum and possibility. Like literally what's stopping me from going and achieving my small dream of making one friend. And what started happening is that momentum started gaining and I started giving that little pretty pathetic tiny little dream some BDE, which we of course know stands for big dream energy. Big dream energy. I started treating it like, yeah, it's a small dream and it's like not something that you would like proudly like talk about at a cocktail party. But for me, it was exciting. And so I started treating it like maybe it was worth like putting my resources towards it and putting my energy towards it and talking to other people like it was a really big deal. And it was something that was important enough to actually orient my entire life around. And that's exactly what I did. While I was still in the midst of like feeling this big dream energy for this relatively small dream, I knew it would eventually fade. So before it could fade away, I wrote up my resignation letter, put in my 2 weeks at my first corporate job, like 2 months out of college. And I spent about 75% of my life savings, which was like sub $1,000 on a one-way plane ticket to Uganda. And so bought my one-way plane ticket, quit my job. You can imagine when I went home that night and I told my parents that I had just quit my first job in the height of a recession to move to Africa. I had never really been to out of the United States of America at that time. And my parents were like, "You're moving where?" And I told them that I was moving to Uganda. And they were like, "You're moving to Uganda? Like, why? What's going on? What are you doing?" And I told them the truth. I said, "Mom and Dad, I'm going to make a friend. My parents were like, oh, sweetie, like, couldn't you just join a running club like your sister? But here is the first point of beginner's pluck. What pluckies know is that our small dreams, taken seriously, counterintuitively, actually have an amazing ability to launch us out of waiting and into creating. We don't take our small dreams seriously enough. I want to talk really quickly about the power of tiny gains. This is a graphic that I pulled from James Clear, who talks about how if we commit to getting 1% better every day over the course of a year, the thing that we are working on improving will be 37 times better by the end of the year. So often, I think as leaders and as people who are so passionate in the world, we fall prey to this kind of just like silver bullet, big idea, big dream thing, where we're like sitting in our office, or like we got our whiteboard out, or like every day we're waking up and we're like, maybe today's the day where I'm going to like crack the code. And I think what I kind of want to tell you is like, maybe a couple of you will do that. You will come up with some sort of like earth shattering, never been done before, like life changing, big idea and big dream. And if that's you, like, you do you, we are all cheering for you, like, woohoo, let's go. For the rest of us, actually, I think the way to build organizations and frankly, lives marked by purpose and passion and impact is by taking our small dreams seriously and just doing the thing. And by the way, you're probably not the first person who has ever done the thing. Like, the way to unlock that 37x growth is by actually going like, what if you got as excited about like a pretty small thing that doesn't actually sound that impressive, right? Like we were talking about in the world of, trying to get more reoccurring donors, like putting the form, the like want to be a reoccurring donor at the top of the form instead of at the bottom. Like, no one's winning a Nobel Peace Prize for that, but just like getting excited about it, doing it. Like, instead of making it a PS in the email, like make it the whole body of the email and get excited about it. Rally your team around the importance of building this up. It doesn't have to be a big dream in the sense of like, it doesn't have to be an earth shattering idea. What your little baby, like not that impressive idea needs to make a huge impact is you as its steward and as its leader to just treat it like it's big and it's important. Cast vision around it, commit to it, put it on the calendar, attach KPIs to it, and follow up on it. So that's what I did. I moved to Uganda to meet one friend. I ended up actually meeting a handful of friends. Overachiever a little bit. I ended up meeting a handful of girls. And these girls specifically are in the top like 3% of scholars in the entire country of Uganda. Wicked smart girls, a part of basically like a college prep program. And through just building community with these young women, what I learned is that they were in the midst of a 9-month, or they were getting ready to graduate into a 9-month kind of gap year that's intended to allow girls, well, all students, to go home, because remember, it's like college prep program, to go home, to make money, and to save money to pay for university in 9 months. And the more I became friends with these young women, the more I realized that they were pretty nervous about this 9-month gap that they were facing for 2 reasons. One, they were going back home to their villages where there was no economic opportunity. And 2, they were losing each other. They were losing this community of other like-minded women who had ambition to not only graduate from high school, but graduate from college and be leaders in their communities. And when we become friends with people, their problems kind of become our problems, and their problem became my problem. And I started brainstorming and thinking about a way that we could solve for both of those things. Keep the girls together, living in community with one another to kind of encourage and spur one another on, and then make some money so that they could pay for college. I tried a host of things. I won't even give you the whole laundry list of things that I tried. One did include starting a chicken farm, which went about as well as you would think for a girl who like grew up in the Midwest suburbs and like had never set foot on a farm. I don't think that my chickens were much worse off with me than this guy's chickens. It's like 76 live chickens attached to the back of that motorcycle. And so I was like, that failed. It failed like spectacularly. It was like definitely a pluck up. And then my friend from back home was like, what about those like strappy, funky sandals that you had made when we were in college? I I did. I made a pair of sandals when we were in college. They were very ugly. But my idea was I just wanted a pair of flip-flops that didn't flop. So I took my flip-flops and I like tore the kind of like rubber thong piece off and I replaced it with some rainbow ribbon, and voila, I had some flip-flops that didn't flop. And honestly, at this point, I had failed at like 5 other things. So I was very open-minded. And I was like, sure, why not? Like, let's make sandals and see if we can make those and sell those in the US. The point of sharing kind of the evolution brings me to the second point of channeling your beginner's pluck. And this is something that beginners do more naturally, that as we move on in our organizations or careers, we kind of start to lose out on. And that is, we need to be people who are married to the problem. We are obsessed with the problem. For me, the problem was keep the girls together, help them earn money so that they can go to university. We are married to the problem. There is nothing that can separate us. It is a lifelong commitment to the problem. Meanwhile, I am from Portland, Oregon, so we are in an open relationship with the solution. We're a little open-minded. We like to try things out. We can, test the waters, meet a variety of different needs. The point being, we as leaders have to model that for our organization. We are wickedly committed to the problem. The solution only matters, and it's only worth protecting if it helps us solve the problem. The further on we get, the more attached we get to our solutions, right? I don't know what it is for you. Maybe it's like the golf fundraiser. Maybe it's the gala. Maybe it's the luncheon, and you've been doing it for 18 years. And even though it requires like 80% of your team's energy for the year, and it drives like less than 10% of your overall revenue, you're like a protector of the solution. But like maybe the solution is no longer working. And in order to build thriving organizations, we have to be leaders who are plucky and courageous enough to be able to go, that might not be the right solution anymore. We might not be protecting the right solution. So let's go back and get closer to the problem and reevaluate and be willing to let those solutions grow and to evolve. So that's what I did. I didn't really care how we solved the problem. Like chickens, sandals, didn't really matter. I ended up coming up with like a prototype. Spent a couple months doing it, had no idea what I was doing, figured it out, got close enough, ended up meeting these 3 young women, Mary, Mercy, and Rebecca, and I made them a promise that changed the whole trajectory of really all of our lives. And the promise was, I promise that if you make sandals for the next 9 months, that you will go to college next year. And they were like, okay. And I was like, okay. And we spent the next several months together sitting under a mango tree, making these sandals. And then something really miraculous happened. Honestly, it was like such a miracle. If this wouldn't have happened, I don't know if my company ever would have gotten off the ground. And the miracle was that I ran out of time and I ran out of money. I ran out of time and I ran out of money, and I literally had no choice. I had these like very subpar sandals that were like 30% of what I like wanted them to be and knew that they could be and that I envisioned, but I literally had no more time and I had no more money. I had to go home and I had to sling these sandals to turn them into cash so that we could keep making more sandals. Now, of course, at the time that felt horrible. It felt horrible. It felt like I'm not ready and it's not right. And I know it could be better. And I'm frankly like a little bit kind of embarrassed about these. But I call it a miracle because it forced me into the third principle of beginner's pluck that we're going to talk about, which is that perfect is the enemy of good enough. And what our organizations and what our missions and what our purposes need is leaders that are okay and like robust enough that they can go, okay, it is kind of embarrassing in the sense that it's like not exactly what I like hoped and dreamed and imagined, but it's good enough. And they know when to put it out into the world. And so I just want to encourage you as you are learning and as you are getting all of these incredible ideas over the next several days. What I don't want to happen is like you go home and you're just kind of like, okay, here's 15 different things. And then you get 15 different big, beautiful, perfect ideas of how it could all go. But you don't have the resources or you don't have the time or you don't have the team and you start to feel really discouraged and really overwhelmed. And so then you don't really do anything. And you went to this awesome summit and you heard from all of these awesome people and you met awesome people and you got awesome ideas. And then you go back home and nothing changes. So just like, will you just do the thing? Like, just do the thing. Like, you don't need, I promise you this. I don't know you. I don't know you. So take it with a grain of salt. But what I can tell you is you don't need one more meeting to figure out what the perfect branding and name for your monthly subscriber program is going to be. You don't. Like, just give yourself, like, you've got 24 hours. You have 24 hours to figure it out. Guess what? If you hate it 6 months from now, there is no monthly subscriber brand name police that's going to come after you and make you keep that for the rest of your life. Like, you can change it. So what your organization needs now more than ever is actually a leader who can go, I'm actually not sure if this is the perfect, the best, the way forward, but it's going to work for us. It's good enough, and we are going to move forward, and we're going to take action on it. So that's what I did. I came back home with like some subpar sandals. By the way, I had no background in business. I had no interest in fashion, as evidenced by this photo that perhaps against better judgment I'm going to share. Just flash up on the screen really quick enough that nobody can take a screenshot of it. Y'all, this photo was taken of me not like after I just emerged from my bedroom with a violent stomach bug, which is kind of what this look says to me. This was taken of me on the day I got engaged. This was like me actually trying to be cute. And I started slinging sandals out of the back of my car. I ended up building an entire global women's lifestyle fashion brand, making not just kind of subpar crappy sandals, but really beautiful ones, and apparel and footwear and leather handbags, products that ended up being actually good enough to be featured in magazines like Vogue and worn by celebrities. More importantly, we enabled hundreds of female scholars to continue on to university, and really tens of thousands of artisans across the globe to have jobs where they were treated with dignity and respect, and were able to provide for their families and do jobs that they loved. And I did it in the context of community, which is the last note that I want to share with you, is that you are in the presence of other people who are problem children and who are bananas enough to think that they can make a right wrong. The work that you are doing is too important, and it's too big, and it's too beautiful for you to do it on your own. You need your people. In fact, Harvard Med School would tell you that the single greatest investment that you can make in yourself as a person, and definitely as a leader, the single best predictor of how happy you will be, how successful you will be, and literally how long you will live is the quality of your warm relationships. You cannot go at this alone. You need people who get your world, who understand the challenges that you're facing, who understand why the things that you're celebrating actually matter, but who are not actually in your world. Sometimes we can't do that with people who are like so close to us that we like employ or report to. And I just want to encourage you, by being here today, there are like thousands and thousands of you, like, who are gathered, who have a lot in common. And there are so many ways that you can plug in and get involved. I know that Dana has a Slack channel that is literally devoted to like finding and curating and bringing together other people who are thinking about how to solve interesting problems in the world, and specifically how to build up reoccurring donors to do that. I encourage you, just like, don't let this be something that you just like have on in the background while you're like cleaning or answering emails. And it's just like more information. You don't need more information. What you need is people who you can share ideas with, and who you can encourage, and who you can raise your hand and ask for help from on the hard days. And so I just really encourage you, whether that is in the chat, you can like ask each other on a date. How great is that? Like, not like date, but kind of friend datey. You can set up a video call. You can join the Slack channel. There really is a lot of opportunities for you in this community to reach out and to make relationships, and actually make a relationship that will really matter. You only need like 2 or 3 of these types of friends to completely change your world, and to encourage you, and to who you can encourage, and to be in it together as our lovely one of my spiritual directors, one of my favorite just like spiritual thinkers and leaders would be Emilio Estevez, better known to some of us as Coach Gordon Bombay of the Mighty Ducks, who of course famously once said that ducks fly together. But I think, of course, what he meant to say was plucks fly together. So please don't miss the opportunity. Yes, there's like great content and amazing information, but I think the single most valuable thing that you're going to get from this time together is being in it together with other problem children. So don't miss the opportunity. All right. Thank you so much for letting me be here. It was such a delight. And just know that I am